Hey there, welcome back to True Crime Doula. Today we're going to be talking about The Con, Kaitlyn's Baby, which is a new podcast on BBC and what is it? CBC and BBC, um, available on Spotify, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. This is a compelling story that involves doulas, which is what I am. And I'm here with my friend RF, who's going to you're going to explain yourself. Um, and we're just going to dive in and just kind of explore this whole story, which is just dark and creepy and weird, and is under the umbrella of the doula profession, which I know a lot about. So go ahead, RF, take it away.
Hi, my name is RF Jujevics. I have been a freelance journalist now and very freelance, I should say, close to 20 years. And for the past, I would say 5 years, I've been doing a combination of investigative work and investigative research. 2 years ago, I received my private investigator's license for the state of New York, so I am a licensed PI. It expires on the 31st. I have my renewal in. The state is very persnickety about how you fill out paperwork. But I'm still
Sneaky. Okay,
persnickety.
good. Okay, so we got that style background. I've been a doula, a freelance doula for, I don't know, over 15 years, working as a birth doula, a postpartum doula, and a childbirth educator. So we're going to bring these two professions together and talk about this story. So we're just go ahead, shoot. What's your first question? Do we want to describe a little bit about what this
Yeah, I've listened to a couple of podcasts about this.
right?
The first one was a podcast called Something Was Wrong, and I believe there are about 7 episodes.
Okay.
And it covers the story from kind of a more jangly, windy way.
Okay.
We hear a lot about a friendship Caitlyn had with somebody. We hear a lot about the driving back and forth of the doulas. But some sort of key pieces of information were left out, and that we do see in the Con Caitlyn's Baby. The biggest one for me, as somebody looking at this as sort of like an investigation or from sort of like true crime adjacent perspective, one of the details that I found the most illuminating was that during the course of her scamming of doulas, which I will have you describe because you are a doula and I am not, is that while she was conning people into believing that she was in labor,
Yes.
she used sound effects of an ambulance, of a hospital, and that's beyond the beyond. Like that's committing to the bit in a way that really stuck out to me, especially because what it's designed to do, it did. It's designed to kick in confirmation bias. These doulas had that little thought in the back of their heads that this person might be something other than what she said somehow. And
Okay.
if they had any doubt, those sounds are going to erase that.
So that's interesting because I did not hear any sound effects described as hospital background. In fact, one of the key things that happened was a dog barking in the background when she was supposed to be being wheeled into the
In
OR.
the operating
So
room, yeah.
that was a big, I love the way they don't call them red flags, they call them pink flags,
Yeah, because
which is
that's
very,
important though, because so I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're faced with a situation and it seems something feels weird, but you
yes,
can't necessarily say what. But
yes.
then, as a social human in a social world, because you can't describe what you're reacting to necessarily, you then try to push it away because, oh, am I being like, I'm the crazy one thinking that someone would pretend this? What does that say about me? Or like, am I judging this person unfairly because of XYZ thing?
Sure.
And that's when you're looking for confirmation that what you're looking at is the actual situation, because that's kind of what you want it to be, even if it's this
Understood.
awful thing. Yeah.
Okay, but we have to back up for a second because so we're reviewing episode 1 and 2. And in those 2 episodes, we have a couple of doulas who are working with her remotely, which is even more easily scammable, right? And which happened during the pandemic, that doulas all of a sudden figured out how they could do support in a virtual way. That usually includes FaceTime or some ability to see the client. But of course, Kaitlyn wasn't going to let that happen because 90% of what was the settings she was in and so forth. It was so ridiculous, even that the idea that she would be being wheeled into the OR or being on the operating table and still have an earbud in her ear. They would
I
never
think because
allow
it was
that, you
during
know?
COVID, but also what you had said at one point when we were just discussing this, and as an aside, I think we are going to have to do a moment where we break down what this show is, but we can sort of put things in here and there. Um,
Yes.
I think part of it is, what was I going to say? Of course, I lost it. Sorry, Jane.
Well, I was talking about working virtually, and
Right,
some of the doulas worked with her in person, where
right.
she was literally
I,
faking the pregnancy
yeah,
right
like
in front of them.
I wonder
I
where
I
she,
mean, faking the
yeah.
labor. I don't want to say the pregnancy. That already is a fake, but she was a little bit overweight, so it was, but
And you can also never tell with people just the way that bodies are. Like,
true.
I mean, also uh it taps into something else that I think is interesting, and that it's she, obviously couldn't scam the same doula twice. But even though she picks people who she doesn't know, that she has no connection to, so there's no way for them to sort of trace whoever she is or whatever she's doing. And she relies on the fact that people have to take you at your word, or else what are we doing? We would never
Yeah.
do anything if we thought everyone was lying to us all the time. We'd be trying to untangle lies that weren't there, and we would never go anywhere. We'd never do anything. We'd never make anything. We'd never talk to anybody. And that's a big thing that comes up. So I have been scammed before
Hmm.
by someone close to me who was pretending to, I mean, a lot of things, but most presently for this kind of thing was an injury that didn't exist.
Ah, yes. A
And
little Munchausen-y kind of thing.
give him an Oscar. Well, Munchausen's a little different. This is another thing because when it's being done for gain, whether it's so that, or to get out of something, like gain money or gain someone's
Isn't it
loyalty.
always for gain? I mean, look
No,
at
but
these shows.
that's the difference. When it's for gain, like that,
Yes.
it's not the act in and of itself, it's the means to the end. It's
Right.
malingering or factitious
Oh,
disorder.
factitious disorder. Yes.
I
Okay.
think,
That's true.
though, I think factitious might apply to Munchausen's because the Munchausen's all they want is the
I think
attention.
they just renamed it. They
Right.
renamed it.
But the distinction is one situation where you're malingering is you're doing it to gain money, to gain something tangible, to like get out of having to go to work. That's a big one. People
Okay.
don't
Yeah,
want to
right,
work,
right,
want to live off of somebody else.
right.
But then there are people who do it for the attention or the dopamine high. And that's, I think, when
Sure.
it's Munchausen's or factitious. When it's
Oh, I see what
malingering,
you're saying.
yeah,
So Caitlin is not, she's not getting any, there's no monetary
no,
gain here. She is
she's,
really just manipulating the doulas in a way that is providing her some satisfaction. And on one hand, like I first started thinking like, okay, so she's very wounded and she needs somebody to take care of her. And this sort of like undivided support that she was
yeah,
getting
yeah.
must have been very comforting to her. But then when it switches into like there's a sexual component to it,
Yeah.
that's when it gets like a little bit like, oh, okay.
And nobody seems to know
Yeah,
what or why. And I think part of it, so that comes up a little bit in the
yeah.
first podcast I listened to, not the one we're talking about. And the way they're setting it up in the con Caitlyn's baby is, I think, and I hope that they're going to address what might be going on there. It's something that people do not like to talk about, I'm sure. I'm sure I mean, I don't know if this has ever come up for you as a doula, like even discussions of things like this or what to do, or did it enter into your training at
Things
all?
like what? Like what?
He's
More
like, well,
specifically,
sometimes people may contact you and it turns out that they're looking for something else. And they're, or is it ever mentioned that because it's Rule 34 of the internet, is if you can imagine it, there's porn of it, basically. So, like, it's not a stretch for somebody to have some kind of draw to this, but why it hinges on actual deception is the part I also find interesting. Like she could hire some actors, or even like, okay, that's expensive, sure, but I'm sure she could find some like-minded people who wouldn't mind doing some kind of intensive
like a
pregnancy.
role playing kind of a thing.
Yeah, like, but why is that not good enough? Has she done that? Do we know? Did she start there?
Now, that sounds way too complicated. So much more easy to just kind of manipulate the doulas who, by nature, are committed, supportive, caring,
Right.
empathetic. This is
Yeah.
our this is our
Yeah. Like
description.
none of
Yeah.
them confronted her as far as we know. I mean, there are about
Why
three
would you? I
people.
mean, it's
Yeah.
such a weird thing but there's that one doula, which it's in the second episode, maybe it's Kate, who says, this talk about paying attention to that little voice in your head. She said that when she showed up at her door, she had this weird feeling like it was at an Airbnb.
Right.
Like, what am I walking into here? What if I'm like being kidnapped or something? Like, she had this like thing in her head, like something is not feeling right to me. And that is exactly what people need to pay more attention to.
Absolutely.
Those little like radar receptors that we all have are valid, and the fact that we push them away is so. Oh, when you look back and you say, why did I push that away? It's so frustrating because
Yeah.
how many times did that happen to people? I love hearing the stories of people who were approached by Ted Bundy and who declined
Mhm.
helping him. Now, when those women tell that story, right? And we would never know this unless it was, a case where it was like multiple cases, as in a serial killer. So we would never know all of those people who got like skeeved out by somebody and just were like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to help you to your car with your crutches, whatever. But every single time those women told that story, that the hair stood up on the back of their neck, that they got this like, oh, one woman said, I looked in the car and the front passenger seat was missing. And that all of a sudden made me feel weird. And then when I looked back at him, his green eyes had gone completely black. That had been reported many times about Bundy because his pupils would dilate with excitement like an animal ready to like seize its prey. His pupils would dilate. Anyway, she saw that and it immediately made her recoil. So that's just one of many stories of women getting kind of like, something doesn't feel right about this, and then they would just be like, I'm sorry, I got to get to class, or I'm sorry, my boyfriend's picking me up, whatever the excuse they came up with. So it's just interesting that this doula had, I mean, certainly her life wasn't in danger. I mean, okay, so there's that. Nobody was,
Right. But she's
caitlin
not going to
wasn't
know that. She's
caitlin wasn't setting her up to be killed,
but she didn't know that. She
but
couldn't
see,
know that.
she couldn't have known that. But what's so interesting about all of these doulas is they were emotionally scarred and wounded and traumatized by putting forth so much effort for someone who was seemingly in great, great crisis, only to find out that none of that was valid or true.
It makes like I said, I've been through a medical deception, we'll call it,
Right,
for lack of a
right.
better term. And some of that medical deception involved, well, this person created a child for themselves and then killed that child off. So, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, but in addition
Well, that's
to,
what she was doing. Caitlin was doing that. And
right, yeah, but I mean, this was like, this had happened in the past and it was sort of not connected to the injury, but,
oh,
um,
I mean, by Caitlin saying,
right.
I'm having a miscarriage or I'm having a stillborn baby. I'm only 24 weeks pregnant and I'm going to have this baby. And they don't send you home to have your baby like on your bathroom floor. If you have a stillborn baby, they induce you. But
Yeah,
it is interesting
infection.
that they don't typically do a C-section for a stillborn or for a fetal demise. They typically make you go through the labor, which of course is
That's the
very
worst. Why would they do
unpleasant.
that?
Yeah. Well, I think just because
Who knows?
there's a risk in surgery. There's always a risk in surgery that is actually greater than anything that could happen in a vaginal delivery. But
But
then
you
again,
should be able to sign that away. I understand
yeah, right, and say, hey, I
that's,
sign up for
yeah,
this C-section.
this is your show. Like you
Uh,
are doing this insane thing. But yeah, I mean, so much of these situations and what I found so interesting about this was exactly what you said. That when the doulas are recounting this experience that they had with this person who appeared incredibly vulnerable, completely alone, about to go through a very difficult physical and emotional experience.
sure,
Um, and so we get their running commentary of what's happening in their heads
right,
as they're doing this, as they're, helping her through. I mean, there's lots of moving around. She's in the bed, she's in the bath, she's getting out of the bath, they're making food, there's dancing around, they're watching TV, whatever.
yeah,
Um, is the signs were there, but while it's happening, you kind of can't put them together because your brain is split between actually doing what you have to do and having this running commentary. Another thing that I think we're
oh,
taught about,
RF, look at the sun coming in behind you. Is there any way to diminish that? You
not
see
an
it?
exact, no, I don't have my view up.
Oh, is it, so there's a huge sunbeam coming right behind your head.
Oh God, lens
It's
flare. Oh, okay. Hold on,
it's kind of beautiful, but it's also like
counterproductive. How
it's
about that?
gonna burn out your corneas if anybody is watching.
How about that?
That's much
Right.
better.
There.
Yeah, okay.
I'm hiding them.
Sorry.
Um, so so people are taught to discount an instinct or a thought or a feeling that they can't quantify.
Yeah.
And that's where this falls apart because these voices can scream at you. And as a human being, you want to rationalize them, you want to contextualize them, you want to have a reason for them. And if you can't find it, it's suddenly an invalid thought to have because
Yeah.
it's proto thought.
Right.
And honestly, I wonder what any of these doulas could have done differently. And I don't think there is. As one of them pointed out, and this was very important to me when it was after, there's a point in the story where Kaitlyn is in the hospital. She's finally gone to the hospital. There's an OB, I don't know if it's a doctor, nurse, whatever, has done an ultrasound and announces to Kaitlyn very nicely, like she's not sure what she's dealing with. I think she says,
Yes.
"No baby, all there is in your uterus is an
Is
IUD."
an IUD. Yes. Whoa.
But
That shocked
yeah,
me. Because that's like, hello, you were not pregnant and you couldn't have
no.
been pregnant, even by accident, to have a second trimester loss,
Yeah,
whatever she was claiming to be going through. So that was one doula's experience.
right,
But then she brought in another doula
right.
to get her through the expulsion
But
of that
yeah,
baby.
there was something I was setting up and I cannot remember what it was. Forgive me, but oh, that stupid lens flare is happening again. I don't know what to do about it. Oh,
Claire.
there we go. Perfect. Okay, I'll just sort of slightly adjust. Sorry about that.
Yes, a
A
lot of
little messier, but fine. I'm a messy investigator. What can I say? All right.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's just, it's so weird because it's like it's very medical what's going on with her. Everything from the stillborn, the going through the birth, the uterine hemorrhage, the being whisked off to the hospital, being airlifted to another outlet, all of these
Oh,
things.
I
Yeah,
remember. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I remember. I'm
Yes,
so
no
sorry. So
problem.
what I was getting at is, and I lost it again. Fuck. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying again. Hold on. Give me a second. This is why video is hard. I get distracted by my own movement and I
That's
lose.
okay. That's okay.
Um, but so basically, Oh, so one woman says, so this is I can't remember which doula it was, but she's sitting with Kaitlyn as Kaitlyn is being told very gently by this medical professional that there's no baby, all there is an
Yes.
IUD. And
Yes.
the doula describes thinking, okay, either this person was convinced they were pregnant and is going through some mental thing like a false pregnancy, which is
Sure.
possible,
Sure.
and they deserve all my compassion in the world.
Right.
Or
Or,
this person is lying and they
yes.
don't deserve my compassion.
Right.
But this woman says very specifically that she decides to do what she can live with.
That's
And
right.
that
That's
is
right.
the crux of this, I think.
That's right.
If anybody out there who's been impacted by something like this, or literally this person, as an outsider and also, but as somebody who's experienced medical deception in a really twisted way, you did the best thing you could do with the information that you had.
Yeah. I
People
don't
can say whatever they want about these individuals, but none of it is true.
know. I mean,
It,
that's what
yeah,
makes the story so hard is that that's a doula's innate compassion. And that got exploited, manipulated, and trashed essentially, which has got to leave you with the residual feeling of like, how can I trust again?
it
And how
does.
can I,
It does.
how can I lay myself bare again in a situation where I'm not going to be kind of doubting, like, is this really happening? I mean, it's so random and unusual, and it's very, very unlikely for that to happen to
Mhm.
several people, but which it did in Ontario. I mean, it did happen to many doulas, and it was only a matter of time before they got talking. But you know,
That actually leads me to
yeah,
something. Do you mind?
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
So, one part of Caitlyn's motivation that I've sort of wondered about,
Mhm.
because, we don't get the benefit of whatever is in her head. So, we're kind of making as many guesses as we can. I
Sure,
mean, it looks like it's pathological, but anyway, um, again, I was going somewhere and I need to turn my selfie off because it's distracting me a
that's
lot.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, let me move it back a little bit. Still good with the thing? Um,
All good.
Trying to remember what it was.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so you were talking about the Caitlin's motivation.
Right, is that she seemed like she wanted to prolong it as long as she could,
Yeah.
but it to me it read like she knew she was going to get caught.
I
I
mean,
wonder if that had effect.
maybe that's a hard one to read.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like all of the varied ways that she got the attention that she needed and
And
that
she
doing,
did it again on house arrest.
oh, she did it on house arrest. Oh my
She did
God.
it at
I
least
know
twice.
that.
I
Spoiler
read an article.
alert. Oh, I got to
Yeah.
hear about that
That's
because,
not in the podcast yet. I don't know if it comes up, but it's
oh, okay.
definitely
Okay.
since, I believe,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
which is
interesting that she got house
crazy.
arrest. I don't feel like that's really appropriate in that
But I
she could
know
go
why
ahead
they
and do
did.
it. Yeah.
I
But
know why they
now,
did.
yeah, but now everybody knows about it. It would be, but anyway, there's new doulas coming out. There's older doulas who might not be on Reddit or whatever.
It's a
They
constant
don't know.
stream of people. Yeah, these
Yeah,
people don't stop, is the thing. I mean, part of me thinks that the enemy of this is the truth, but
yeah,
that's not true. I don't know if she's high on her own supply at this point, if she
uh-huh.
somehow has some sort of internal justification, whether that's I've been so wronged in my life that, this is the only way I can get attention, or, I'm putting my whatever black hole of emotional need above everybody else. I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, but that stood out to me is that, she was operating within what one would think would be sort of a limited pool because of barriers like distance. So, it continued to work. I mean, but to the legal part of why I think she was given something like house arrest, and I know I'm getting ahead of the podcast here, so you can cut this out, but this is my first run. I've not done this before, but
Okay.
um
But what do you think? House arrest because,
because it's a people don't know how to classify this.
Right. It's an emotional
Yeah.
crime, really, in a way.
But I mean, I think what she was booked under or whatever was public mischief, which is essentially, I believe, wasting time of a provider or a service or the state or whatever. But I mean, the tail end, like the disclaimer at the end of both episodes, I think, at least definitely the second one, is that she was not convicted of any sexual assault. They weren't able to make that stick in court.
Sure.
So I would want to see the court transcripts. I don't know the Canadian system particularly well. I've done one very light investigation in British Columbia,
Okay.
so the records could potentially be there.
Right.
Um, I don't know. Was it a bench trial? I
I
think it was
don't
a
know.
bench trial. I feel like it
Probably.
was a bench trial.
Instead of a jury trial, you're saying?
If I were her, I'd go for a bench
Oh,
trial. If I was anybody,
100%.
I'd go for a bench trial.
That's true.
Forget it.
Well, some people want their day in court. Um,
Why?
I don't know what she could defend herself as. Well,
Well, I
there's
mean, why they didn't argue for some sort of mental competency evaluation or some
sure.
not competency really, but like some kind of evaluation. I mean, maybe she seems like she's able to get it together to appear at least somewhat not unhinged, I guess. I don't know. I mean, is this a pathology that's out of her control or is it within her control? That's another thing that's difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, you'd think if you're on house arrest, you're not going to be, but did she just fly too close to the sun or was it something that got ahead of her that she couldn't stop?
Well, listen, I mean, it seems like there should be another category for scams that are not about financial gain,
Absolutely.
or they're more about deception, and that kind of goes into the territory of emotional deception.
But
So
legally,
there was this woman, I used to see this story like pop up on YouTube and Dr. Phil and whatever. It
mhm,
was this woman who continually made up stories about being pregnant. And every time she befriended a new person, um, she sold this whole line of like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And then she would lose the pregnancy
mhm.
halfway through, very similar. She liked to say that it was twins, and she'd show sonogram pictures. Again, just like with Kaitlyn, if you did a reverse Google search on those images, that would just be like, one of the top ones that
It's
would
like
come
they
up.
want to get caught.
I don't think I don't know that they see it that way. I mean,
No, they don't.
this woman that I'm talking about, so one part of it, the financial gain was letting some guy that she had been dating know that she was pregnant and then trying to get money out of them. So extortion. And then, and then she'd have the miscarriage. But this woman who went on one of the programs to say how harmed she was by this, she was very emotional and saying, I I threw a baby shower for her. I put so much into this. My family bought her a bassinet and a stroller because she had nothing. She was going to be a single mom. See, all of those things are critically important to the person doing the deception because that's what they are craving, that adoration and that attention and all of that support that they're not getting in some other part of their life. And
Part of it is,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not Canadian and I'm also not a lawyer, so take this for what it is.
sure.
A long time ago, my dad, who started in contracts, so that was his sort of thing, is that everything used to like to say that everything's a property value, and it's true. Even in something like an emotional distress case, which is a civil case, I'll have
Civil,
that's
right, not
another
criminal.
thing.
Yep.
They're incredibly difficult to prove. There has to be a lot of paper evidence evaluation stuff. I mean, this is from my limited perspective. I don't specialize in any of that really,
No,
but
but that sounds right. Yeah. Go ahead.
so where you place sort of an emotional crime is difficult, I think. I've seen this before in different things. But why isn't this illegal? Because also when you're scamming somebody, the ways in which it becomes illegal is when money is involved. So that's why you're going to see a lot of wire fraud when it's somebody
Wire
who
fraud,
has
exactly.
it's a fraudulent GoFundMe, and then as soon as there's that, that's wire fraud. And depending on the amount is how they determine the sentence, I think,
Right.
too. I mean, it's really these they're also classified as nonviolent, which, I mean, this is certainly like a physical crime, but it doesn't fit anything else, I would
You mean
imagine.
not a physical crime? Is it a
So,
physical crime?
I mean, well, I mean, she was these doulas were providing physical aid to her in ways. I don't know. I mean, there's
They
another
weren't
part,
harmed physically.
but here's another part that I wonder about, and I think maybe this is maybe where we'll leave it because I hope that they're going to pick this up within the next two episodes.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that um I believe this is in the first episode, possibly the second. One of the doulas, Kaitlyn asks one of the doulas about progressing labor via various forms of stimulation, whether it's, and the doula, this is where sort of the tenor of the conversation changes a little bit. And the doula explains that she talked to Kaitlyn about it because Kaitlyn asked about it. So she was very direct. And then there's a period of time where it seems like the doula says that she sort of was, I'm not sure what she says exactly, but what I got from that is that she kind of led Kaitlyn in a very clinical way, I would imagine, how to use stimulation to progress labor. It's obviously a really horrible thing to talk about. And I can see the hesitation in that interview, or what I take as hesitation. But I wonder, and I wondered this when I heard the first podcast too, did she somehow make them or coerce them into a situation where they thought that they were rendering some kind of actual logical help? This will help progress labor. Did she coerce them into walking her through masturbation or something? I don't know.
Let's hold up for 1 second and then we'll end right here. But that is not ever typical of what a doula would do. So there is something called nipple stimulation, which stimulates the production of
Prolactin.
oxytocin in the body.
Yeah,
No doula does that to somebody. It would
right.
be really, I just have
And they're on
never
the phone.
heard of that. So it would be the person, the laboring person would do it to themselves.
But would the
But
doula be coaching them over the phone, is what I'm wondering, if she led them into that.
it came up in the second episode when she was there in person. And that's when she observed that Kaitlyn was possibly masturbating over the side of the bed.
I think it came up twice, though. I
And
think
she
it was
was
once
right
on the
there.
phone.
Whatever it was,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely blurring a weird line and
Right. I mean,
make an
yeah.
already uncomfortable situation much more uncomfortable.
Yeah, I found like it's like very much I think, I mean, at least in the US, I'm fairly sure there is a section of like medical fraud, because fraud's a weird thing. Like if I said I'm somebody named Jane, I'm not, but that's not fraud. I'm not pretending to be someone specific. If I said I'm Jane Friedman and I'm a doula, and I said called you Friedman, I'm sorry, Freeman, family name Friedman. Anyway, um, my aunt married a guy named
I
Friedman.
understand what you're getting at.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's like if I say I'm Jane Freeman, I live at blah 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 street, I live in Jersey City, I'm a doula, that's where it gets dicey. Like if I fraudulently use your name somewhere, but if I'm just pretending to be some doula named Jane, that's not criminal fraud.
Right, you're getting a little abstract here
Okay.
as it relates to this particular case
Right.
because this is the interesting part of it. Where does the fraud, the deception, the crime, where does that really come in? So we're going to pick up on that next time. Shall we do it that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's
Did
see
I
where
do
this
okay,
podcast
Jane?
is going.
I did okay?
Yeah, you did
I
great.
really did. Sorry,
I'm
I get caught
going to
off.
stop recording. Hold on.
Yeah. I get